Number 7 of A Christmas Miscellany 2018 by Various. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Number 7, A Christmas Tree by Sabine Baring Gould. Tom Stephen was dressed in his very best, a black coat, a tie of blue satin studded with veritable planets, and in it a new zodiacal sign, a fox in full career that formed the head of a pin. Tom's collar was so stiffly starched and so high that to turn his head and look over the top of that wall of china was impossible. If he desired to see that which lay to his right or left, he was compelled to turn his entire body, as on a pivot. Tom was unaccustomed to such a rig-out, and therefore did not look happy in it. Tom, in his workaday suit of the color of the earth, with a string tied under his knees, gathered the trouser together, and with a dusty slouch wide-awake stuck at the back of his head, but on one side of that, and with his great, honest, cheery face, ever with a smile on the lips and a dancing light in his eyes, thus Tom was picturesque, delightful. But Tom, in his Sunday best, did not look at his best. The day was Christmas Eve, and there was to be a supper with a dance at the Hall, given by the squire to his workmen and their families. Tom was on his way to this, with a face that shone with yellow soap and the friction of a rough towel, and not only so, but he was to attend thither Isabella Froude, the belle of the village, and one with whom, as every one said, he had made it up, and a handsome couple they would be. "Bless ye," said Tom, when folks asked him when it would be. "Lor bless ye, you know more about it than me. Go ask Bella. She may can fix it. 'Tain't my place, you know." And then he laughed, and thought he had said a good thing. Tom Stephen was an active, intelligent young fellow, serving as under-gardener, getting a respectable wage, and there was positively no reason why he should not marry. But he was inert in just this one particular, or unable to make up his mind. Isabella was 3 years his junior, with a very delicate skin and lovely rosy complexion, fair hair, and forget-me-not blue eyes, somewhat doll-like, save in this, that a doll is never self-conscious, and self-consciousness spoke out of every look of Bella's eyes, every turn of her head, every motion of her body. But was she to be blamed? I think not. The squire always had a pleasant word to give her. The young ladies at the Hall made much of her. Every one with one voice declared that she was a beauty and the pride of the village. Under such circumstances she must have been endowed with unusual common sense and strength of character not to have become vain and self-satisfied. Bella lived at the lodge, and it was her practice to open the gates when carriages drove up, and on such occasions she was quite aware that the ladies, and above all the gentlemen, looked at her, and when immediately after passing she saw them turn to each other and say something, then she was confident that they said, "What a pretty girl!" and being obliged to keep herself neat and nicely dressed, did much towards making her attractive. It was understood, or half understood, that Tom would call at the lodge on his way to the Hall and pick up Isabella, and go on with her. It was in this way. The day before, Tom had said to her, "More wonderful thing, mayhap, Belle, than that I should come and fetch you away to the Hall tomorrow, and then you'll give me the first dance in 5 arter." "Well, I'm sure I don't mind," she had replied, and so it was understood that he should go for her, and that she should expect him. "Why, whatever you be about, Polly!" exclaimed Tom Stephen, as he called upon a tall, pale girl with pick and spade over her shoulder. That girl was Mary Mauduit, who lived with a frail, suffering little sister in a cottage, and supported herself by needlework and starching and washing. She had been a teacher in the school, but had been compelled to resign, owing to her sister's health. These two were together, and they were orphans. The child could not be left. "Why, Tom, how fine you be! Where you be going to?" That was the way in the country. A question begets another before it is answered. "I be going to the Hall. There's grand goings on there tonight." "So I've heerd, but I didn't mind it, and I reckon that Bella will be there too." "For certain, but what are you about with pick and shovel, I'd like for to know?" "Well, if you must know everything, Tom, it's for little Bess." "Not going to dig a grave?" Tom would have bitten his tongue out. He was mad with himself for uttering such a question. It had bounced out of his mouth without thought, and now he saw the color rush into Mary's face, her eyes fill, and her lips tremble. "Oh, hang me for an idjit," said Tom. "I mean it. It's just my ways, Paul. I want to say something smart and just say the wrong thing always. But what be about with them tools?" "Well, it's this, Tom. I thought I'd give little Bessie a Christmas tree. I've got a few trifles to hang on it, some oranges and nuts and a needle case and so. And I got Mrs. Wannacott to come in for an hour and sit with she whilst I went to the plantation after a tree. The squire gave me leave," she added in explanation and self-exculpation. "But, dear heart alive, you don't want a pick and spade for getting up a young spruce. You want the chopper or a little handsaw." "I don't wish to kill the tree. I thought if I get her up by the roots, I could plant her again in the garden, and she'd grow up to a big tree, and it'd be something to look at, every year growing bigger." "What size tree do you want?" "Not such a terrible big one, just middlin' like. I can't have her too small, as I ain't got no tapers like the tiny red and yaller and green uns they had up to the parsonage last Christmas. I've only got bits of common candle ends, and they'd be too heavy for a mite of a tree. How will you bring back your tree in the moors?" "Roots, Mary, with soil and pick all together." "Well, I reckon I can make 2 journeys." "You can't make 2 for the tree." Mary stood silent. "I tell you what I'll do, Polly. I'll off with this dratted collar and put aside my new coat and away with you to the plantation. If you go and mistake and have up a deodora or a Douglas instead of spruce, the squire'll kick and scream." "Oh, you're too kind, Tom, but you'll be late for the entertainment." "Oh, that's nothing. Not 2 minutes. She'll wait." He did not explain, but Polly understood that she signified Bella. But she did not know that it had been understood that Tom was to fetch the pretty girl from the lodge. "I dare say you'll let me put my coat and that dratted collar in your cottage. Lord, Polly, I'm like a donkey in a pound when I've got that collar on, jumping up and down and trying to look over the wall and clear it if I can." A couple of minutes later, Tom, divested of collar and coat, with pick and spade over his shoulder, was attending Mary Modditt when the head gardener passed. He was a Scotchman and a widower, a man of much self-confidence and independence. "What, off, Mr. Mudstephen?" The gardener addressed his subordinates with a Mr. It made himself more important, marked the distance between them more emphatically. "Yes, Mr. McSweeney, just to take up a young spruce for she." "Ta-ta," said the Scotchman condescendingly, and passed on. "It's been a bit stuffy with me," said Tom, confidingly to his companion. "What's all about, I can't tell. Perhaps he guesses I knows too much, but, Lord, I'm not one to blab." "Perhaps he's a little jealous," said Mary slyly. "Folks do say he has been thinking about Bella, but there, 'tain't no good dreaming of going against you, Tom." "I don't have no need to them tales. People will talk." "Besides, if he were looking out for a Mrs. McSweeney, I reckon he'd go after widders. Ain't he a widower hisself?" "That don't follow," said Mary. "Don't it? Then it art," retorted Tom. "There, don't be snuffy with me," said Mary. The getting up of a suitable tree and its transport to the cottage of the Mauduits was not a matter of 2 minutes, nor of half an hour. Tom was aware that Isabella would have been kept waiting, but he relieved his mind with the consideration that she would take it for granted that he was detained by some business, and would walk on alone to the hall. The distance was trifling. He could explain matters when he arrived, and she would at once understand the circumstances. "I don't see how you're going to stick them candle ends onto the branches," said Tom. "I shall heat hairpins and run 'em through." "That's fine," exclaimed Mudstephen derisively. "And when the candles be burning, the flame will heat the hairpins red hot, and they'll melt the composite, and there'll be a pretty mess, and the candle ends falling about on all sides and firing everything. I hope you're insured." "Oh, I can manage it." "No, you can't. Excuse me, Polly, I reckon mother at home has got some bits of tapers from the parsonage tree last year. Her was up there helping, and they throwed the tree away when done with, and her's a 7 woman and can't abide no waste, and I know her pulled off and kept the remains of candles. They have wires for handling of them on. If you don't mind my leaving that collar here, you won't let nothing damage it, nor let the cat get at it, will you, Polly?" I'll run home and see what mother have got. I couldn't run in that collar. It would be sheer impossible." So instead of going on to the hall, here was another detention. But Tom was a good-natured lad. He was not needed at the hall, and here at the cottage he was of real assistance. After the young man had been away nearly a quarter of an hour, he returned with a small box full of portions of tapers, and some entire, and sundry little sparkling ornaments that had furnished the tree the preceding Christmas, and had been cast aside, but saved by the prudent and frugal Mrs. Monteithon. "And here, Polly," said Tom, "here's a spotted dog in china as stood on my mantel-shelf that little Bessie be welcome to. You can set it under the tree. Now I'll clap the tree mores into a tub, and then I'm off to the hall." When Tom, reinvested in collar and coat, arrived at the lodge and inquired for Isabella, he learnt, which did not much surprise him, that she had gone forward. So he went to the hall by himself, not greatly concerned at being late. He knew that all who were invited would not be able to arrive punctually. There would be 2 sittings down to supper, and he would be in time for the second. When he arrived, he looked about him for Isabella, and saw her seated beside the Scotch gardener, who was helping her to trifle. With a little difficulty he made his way behind the chairs, and in and out among the servants who were waiting on the guest, to where Isabella was dipping into the trifle. "So sorry, Bella, I couldn't help it," said he. "Oh, delicious," said Bella. "I beg your pardon?" "I was speaking to Mr. McSweeney. I only want to say I was unavoidably detained." "The jam is strawberry," said Bella. "Whole strawberries from our own garden," said McSweeney. "I'm very fond of strawberries," observed Bella. "So am I," said the Scotch gardener. "Have some more. I'll remember you in the strawberry time, and send you up the first dish I ripen. Course I'll ripen 'em early in the greenhouse. You shall have some as soon as they're fit to be picked." "How good of you, Mr. McSweeney!" "Not at all. I live but to oblige. And you—" He looked round at her. "For you I would do anything." "Bella," said Tom over her chair, "I really could not help it." "Will you please to move, Mr. Monteithon? You are jogging my chair." "Do you like grapes?" asked McSweeney. "I rather flatter myself on my grapes. I am able to keep them, too, so well. My large white muscats. But there, you shall have some. I'll send you up a really choice bunch. I think the second sitters down are coming in now. Miss Isabella, if you have done, we will rise and let the others take our places. Here, you, Monteithon, can have my seat. If you've brought Mary Mauduit, I have no doubt she can have Miss Frode's chair." Poor Tom did not enjoy his supper, and that over, when he sought Isabella to tender his excuses, she deliberately turned her back on him. It was clear McSweeney had made mischief. He had told her that for the sake of that pale Polly Mauduit he had neglected to fulfill his engagement and keep his appointment. Dancing began, and Bella sat out with the Scotch gardener, who was too serious a man to approve of the light fantastic toe. As he explained to Bella, it was against his principles. "But don't let that interfere with your enjoyment if you wish to go to Mr. Monteithon." "Oh, not at all," said Miss Froude. Huffed, hurt, poor Tom withdrew. He slunk away from the hall. Among so many he would not be missed, and of enjoyment there was none after his rebuff. It would madden him to see how Bella carried on with the Scotchman. He walked through the park, groaning, grumbling, resentful. He was not angry with himself for not keeping his appointment, nor with Polly for having detained him, but with Bella, whom he designated as a minx, and with McSweeney, whom he termed a widdered Scottish rogue. He left the park. He walked hastily on. Then, finding that in the agitation of his feelings he could not keep his head in one position, and that he was consequently liable to cut his throat, he halted and took off his collar, and fastened it by the stud round his left arm above the elbow. Presently he reached the cottage of the Mauduits, and he could see through the little window that the tree was alight. It twinkled through the panes. The temptation to turn aside, rap at the door, and enter was not to be resisted. To his knock he received an answer as he opened the door. The answer came from an inner room. "It be I, Polly," called Tom. "Just passin' and wanted to see how Bessie be enjoyin' of herself." Come in, Tom." The young man strode through the kitchen into the adjoining chamber. There lay, in her bed, the sick girl, a lovely child, with large, burning, dark eyes and a hectic flame in her cheeks. She was supported in the arms of her sister, and was looking with delight at the little candles, at the oranges, and the glittering tin ornaments. "Tom," said Mary, "Bessie do thank you for the spotted dog." "Yes, I do," said the sick child, striving to lift herself and extend a hand to the young gardener. "But gracious me, Tom!" exclaimed Mary, "whatever is the meaning of that?" pointing to the white band round his arm. "It is like what folks put on now when in mourning, only it's white." "He's going to be married," said the sick child. "It is only that stiff collar. I couldn't bear it no longer," exclaimed Tom. Then the child laughed and laughed till she coughed. Suddenly Mary uttered a cry. Tom saw a crimson stream. "Run, run, Tom! For heaven's sake, run for the doctor!" And Tom ran. In half an hour he returned. Polly was kneeling by the bed. On it lay the child, the face almost white, but yet with a little color in the delicate cheek. Her hand held tightly that of her sister. The doctor had not come. He was out. Would not be back till morning. Tom could not explain this, and he knew, moreover, that the surgeon could effect nothing. Without a word he knelt also by the child's bedside. The candles were quivering to extinction on the Christmas tree. One was guttering and sending a stream of wax over the head of the spotted dog. Then another fell, twinkling, through the boughs and went out, and at the same time the light went out in Bessie's eyes. A few days later, when the earth had closed over the child, Tom was speaking with Mary, and she said to him, "Tom, I think now I should like that Christmas tree be planted on the little maid's grave. Will you oblige me by doing it?" Then, after wiping her eyes, "Tom, that is a tree of death." The head gardener triumphantly carried away Bella. The marriage took place within 6 weeks of the Christmas supper and dance. Isabella Froude had become Mrs. Sandy McSweeney, and was planted in the gardener's beautiful cottage. But in all things human there comes a change. Within a very short time certain matters started to light. What these were you shall hear from the squire's own lips as he addressed Tom on Stephen. "Tom," said the squire, his broad rosy face very hot and agitated, "Tom, I've bundled McSweeney off. I don't see why I should have to buy the fruit I grow from the greengrocer in our market town. I don't see why, if I purchase bulbs and greenhouse plants, they should invariably disappear and be reported to have died. I don't see why, if I buy flower seeds, they should come up in other folks' gardens. I have not been able to get fruit for my table without sending to town to buy it. I have been ruined in procuring vast supplies of choice plants from nurserymen, and have not enjoyed them. McSweeney is off. Hang it, you may not be a professional and A1 and all that, but you are honest as daylight. I feel I can trust you, and dash my buttons, there is the situation vacant for you, if you choose to have it. And there is the cottage. The only disadvantage is that it is too large for you, and you are unmarried." "Oh, as to that, sir, that is easily remedied. I be just now on my way to the parson to get him to have marry me as next Sunday." "Mary? Mary who?" "Mary Maudois, sir." "Oh, oh! I wish you joy. An excellent girl. There it is for you, the house, Tom. You and Mary shall go into it as soon as I have seen the back of McSweeney and his Bella, and have had it whitewashed. And hang it, Tom, here, come round to my study, and I'll give you a cheque for £10 towards the furnishing." "Oh, I thank you, sir. I thank you with all my heart." "No need of thanks, Tom. Bless my soul, when a master has a trustworthy, honest servant, it is he who is to be counted lucky, and unless he is an ass, he will keep him. There, come round to the study." And now nearly 2 years have passed, and this time we see a little party coming out of the church porch. As I live, it is Tom with Mary, no longer Maudui, but Mont Stephen. But they are not alone. There is a baby in a long white robe being brought forth, a babe that had been carried into church to be christened. As Mary stood in the autumn sunlight outside the porch, she touched Tom's arm and said, "Let us go to little Bessie's grave." And they went, and the baby was taken there also, over the drooping grass, wet with autumn rains. "The poor little Christmas tree," said Mary, "although a tree of death, lives. See how hearty it appears." "It is no tree of death," answered Tom. "See, here is the first fir cone. It is alive and bears seed. It is no tree of death, but a tree of life." And then Tom laughed. "Mary," said he, "I think for once in my life I've said a good thing." But Mary did not applaud. "Tom, do you think the little fir cone really has life in it?" "Of course it has." Mary picked it and then put it into the tiny hand of the baby. "Look, Tom," she said, "but for that Christmas tree you and I would never have become what we are to each other. And now in it is the seed of life, and so on and on and on forevermore. Our baby has it, and it shall be sown. And so, really, Tom, there seems to be no end to life. It goes on forever and forever." "Amen," responded Tom. End of A Christmas Tree by Sabine Baring Gould.